Rome, August 10th, 258 AD. The sun doesn't rise, it erupts. A scorching fireball hanging low over the city, pressing the breath from every chest. The cobbled square of the eternal city sizzles underfoot like the top of an oven. The air is thick with soot and sweat. In the center of the square, an iron grill the size of a man's bed glows red, perched above smoldering embers. Flames licking it from below like a serpent waiting to strike. A man is dragged toward it. He is barefoot, his skin already shining with sweat, though not a drop from fear. He does not resist. Roman soldiers, grim-faced, bind him to the grill with iron chains. They stretch his arms and legs outward until his back arches. The heat singes the hairs from his body before he even touches the metal. Then, they lower him. The scream never comes. Instead, after minutes of searing, sizzling pain, a voice rises, steady, surreal, and almost amused. "Turn me over. This side is done." The crowd goes silent. The executioners recoil. Who was this man? And what kind of soul laughs while his body is being cooked alive? His name was St. Lawrence. And this is the story of the man who transformed a Roman execution into a sermon of fire, and who still burns in the memory of history. Long before the flames and the grill, before his name echoed in the churches of Rome and Spain, Lawrence was just a boy, born in Huesca, in the Roman province of Hispania, around the year 225 AD. He was raised by Christian parents during a time when Christianity was still illegal, a whispered faith passed in catacombs and sealed with the blood of the faithful. From a young age, Lawrence was different, not driven by ambition, not by conquest, but by a burning, quiet devotion. He studied theology in Caesar Augusta, today's Zaragoza, where he met a fellow firebrand of the faith, Sixtus, a brilliant teacher destined to become pope. When Sixtus moved to Rome, Lawrence followed him. Their bond was sacred, forged by shared belief and love for a church that was already being hunted. In 257 AD, Sixtus became Pope Sixtus II and appointed Lawrence as Archdeacon of Rome, the first of 7 deacons and one of the most important leaders in the early church. Lawrence's duties were immense. He oversaw sacred relics, distributed alms, protected the church's treasures, and, most importantly, served the poor. But even his holy appointment could not shield him from what came next. In the same year Lawrence rose, Emperor Valerian declared war on Christianity. The empire, crumbling from within and threatened by outside forces, needed someone to blame. Christians, with their refusal to bow to Rome's gods, their loyalty to a crucified king, their growing underground network became the perfect scapegoats. Valerian then issued an edict. All bishops, priests, and deacons must renounce Christ and sacrifice to Roman gods, or face exile and execution. By 258, the edict turned bloody. On August 6th, while celebrating Mass in the catacombs of Praetorius, Pope Sixtus II and 4 deacons were arrested. There were no trials, no public denouncements. They were dragged into daylight and beheaded on the spot. When Lawrence saw the guards marching his mentor to his death, he ran toward him, tears streaking his face. The crowd parted. "Where are you going, Father? Without your son? Where are you going, holy priest, without your deacon?" Sixtus turned to him, blood trickling from his scalp.
"I do not leave you, my son. I go before you. In 3 days you shall follow me."
Rome knew who Lawrence was. More than a deacon, he was the treasurer of the church. The prefect of Rome saw a golden opportunity. With the Pope dead and the church leaderless, this lowly deacon surely held vaults of treasures, chalices, vestments, coins, relics, all ripe for imperial seizure. He summoned Lawrence and gave him 3 days. "Return to me with the treasures of the church," the prefect said, "or face torture and death." Lawrence nodded. He asked for time. But what he did next would become the most legendary act of defiance in early Christian history. For 3 days, Lawrence worked tirelessly, but not to hide the treasure, not to gather it. He gave it all away. He sold golden cups, melted down silver crosses, took holy vestments from the altar, and gave them every last coin to the poor, the crippled, the sick, and the hungry. Then, on the 3rd day, he returned to the prefect, but he was not alone. He entered the chamber flanked by beggars, lepers, orphans, widows, the blind, and with calm defiance, he stretched out his arm and said, "Behold, the treasures of the church." The prefect was stunned, then enraged. His power had been mocked, his greed exposed, and so he sentenced Lawrence not to a clean death, but to something ancient, something monstrous. An iron grill was constructed. It would be Lawrence's altar and his tomb. The executioners stoked coals until they blazed beneath the iron. The metal glowed like molten lava. Even standing nearby caused burns. Lawrence was stripped. His body, young, lean, trembling, was chained flat against the grill. And then, he was lowered. The moment his flesh touched iron, his skin blistered instantly, separating from muscle like parchment in fire. The sound was sickening, a wet hiss, like meat thrown onto a skillet. Fat melted and popped. His thighs twitched involuntarily as nerves snapped. Muscles contracted so hard they tore at the joints. The crowd turned away. Some vomited. But Lawrence didn't scream. He stared skyward, face serene, as if seeing something none of them could. And then, to the horror of all, he laughed. "Turn me over," he said. "This side is done." A joke. A martyr's joke. Not to provoke, not to amuse, but to show them. His faith burned hotter than their fire. He didn't die with hatred. He didn't curse his killers. He faced the worst death imaginable and turned it into a final sermon. If stories like this shake something in you, subscribe. These are the voices history tried to silence. Tradition says Lawrence died still praying. His body, retrieved by faithful Christians, was buried along the Via Tiburtina. His grave became sacred ground. A century later, Emperor Constantine would build a church over it, a basilica of the burned. But the flame of Lawrence spread far beyond Rome. In Spain, his homeland, King Philip II built the monastery of San Lorenzo de El Escorial, designed in the shape of a grill. Painters like Rubens, Titian, and Fra Angelico captured the moment of agony, not with screams, but with serenity, as if Lawrence had already stepped into heaven. Writers, too, took up his story. Prudentius, St. Augustine. His love for Christ, Augustine wrote, burned more fiercely than the fire below him. In a world obsessed with pleasure and terrified of pain, Lawrence stands as a defiance symbol that true treasure is not gold, but love. That real power is not force, but sacrifice. That courage is not the absence of fear, but grace in the fire. Every year, on August 10th, his feast is celebrated. And every summer, the sky above us burns with falling stars. The tears of St. Lawrence, streaking across the heavens like the embers that consumed him. Not as sorrow, but as light. You stayed until the end, maybe because some part of you knows what it means to suffer, or to believe in something bigger than yourself. Subscribe if you're ready to face the fire, and remember those who laughed through it.